Are you that person who wants to travel on your own? Or maybe you wish you had someone you could travel with, and since you don't, you just avoid booking the trip altogether. Maybe you're already at the step of thinking about taking a trip on your own, but just afraid to take that leap. Well, I'm here to help. Hey there, welcome back to the Prescription of Travel MD podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Courtney Downes, ER doc, points travel strategist, and your guide to fitting more wellness and adventure into your busy life. Today, we're diving into a topic that comes up all the time: the challenges faced by the solo traveler. Traveling by yourself can be daunting. Trust me, I know. But it can also be an incredible experience. I found that it's become sort of a guilty pleasure, something that you may not even know that you need until you do it. And then from there, it's all she wrote. So I'm coming off of a high from what I call my semi solo trip where I booked this last minute flight and I flew to Paris and I went to a concert by myself there and spent a day in Paris taking the train to Nice, also by myself, where I would ultimately meet up with my sister to finish out the rest of our trip and tour of the south of France. So honestly, the timing for this episode couldn't be better. Shortly, we'll be jumping into a conversation with a travel coach who also helps women who want to pursue this but need a little bit of help along the way. So we'll talk a little bit about her journey into solo travel and how she helps women who want to travel on their own do this as well. I do want to take a few minutes to speak directly to anyone who's feeling that pull to travel, but also feeling stuck. Maybe you're nervous about going alone, or you're waiting on your friends or your partner, your spouse, schedules to line up. If that's you, here are 5 things that I want you to know. The first thing is that your desire to travel is reason enough. You don't need a group chat consensus or a perfect plus one. If you feel called to explore, that's valid. Okay. And I think it's worth prioritizing. So don't let your dreams sit on the shelf waiting for someone else's calendar to open up. Book the trip. Number 2, solo doesn't have to mean lonely. Okay. So some of the best connections happen when you travel solo with the locals, with other travelers, and most importantly, with yourself. You can still take group tours, you can join experiences or dine at the bar. Those type of things will invite conversation. Food tours, my favorite way to explore a new place. The food, the culture, you meet people. And I do this if I'm going solo or if I'm going with other people. So I've heard countless stories from other travelers who've met and become lifelong friends with other travelers that they've met along the way. So just know that just because you're going alone doesn't mean that you're lonely or that you have to be while you're there. Okay. Number 3, start with the soft launch. What I mean by this is that if you're really apprehensive, I would start by trying like a solo overnight trip in your own city or state. Take yourself to the hotel and to dinner, see a show and see how that feels. Try it out, right? Maybe you'll try a wellness resort that has structure in the community that's built around solo activities, such as Miraval, which you can book with points, by the way, or many of the other wellness places that are they're used to seeing solo travelers. And maybe this will provide a stronger sense of safety and they don't take an act of Congress to get to. Maybe you can join a retreat where everything's already planned for you. So there are tons of options. If you're a physician or PA or MP or other healthcare professional specifically, I know that there are tons of retreats that are tailored to you that you can even earn CME credits for. I talk about this all the time because I know that CME is a requirement. Again, you can be reimbursed for it by your employer in many cases. Sometimes you have dedicated time off for this. And I think it's a great opportunity to just dip your toes into solo travel. I think you're going to build the confidence that you need without having to plan every single detail by yourself. I think it's very important to plan, important for your comfort and for your confidence. I do recommend choosing a destination that feels safe and manageable. So book yourself a nice accommodation. I'm a hotel resort girl all the way, especially when going solo, but do what feels good for you. You can research the logistics of getting there. Is there transportation to and from the resort that you don't have to think about? Find out a little bit about the surrounding areas and neighborhoods that may help you feel more comfortable. And don't underestimate the power of ChatGPT in helping plan your trip. So you can try using a prompt such as, I'm a 38-year-old female who likes history and food. So help me plan a solo trip within the US for 3 nights. That's easy. And then see what you get back. So we used it when we were in France and found it spot on when trying to plan last minute activities for the days when we had like nothing planned at all. So totally worth a try. Seriously, the more confident you are in your plan, I think there's less room for fear to grow. I would also reframe that fear as freedom. So solo travel gives you total freedom. No compromising on what to eat or see or do. That independence might feel a little scary at first, but it's also very empowering. You get to write your own story, and you don't have to wait to start writing it, okay? You're allowed to want more for yourself and to go after it, even if it means going alone. And if you're looking for inspiration or a little nudge in the right direction, today's guest, Lisa Saper-Bloom, is here to help. She's the founder of 123 Go Solo and a solo travel coach who helps women embrace the freedom and magic of solo adventures. She's an advocate for saying yes to your next independent adventure, just like myself. And Lisa shares how she went from dreaming about travel to really just helping other people plan meaningful solo trips. She's not a travel agent, but she does help women who are, again, trying to get over the fear and the discomfort that comes with thinking of solo travel and really just putting it into action. So, whether you've never traveled alone or you're just craving that next great escape, this episode is packed with practical tips and plenty of inspiration. So, let's get into it. Such a pleasure to have you here with us, Lisa.
It is such a pleasure to be here. Thank you, Courtney.
So I just feel like this is going to be such a good episode, coming off of my own adventure where I turned an already planned trip to the south of France that I took this summer with my sister into a semi solo adventure. I booked this last minute business class flight to Paris a day earlier using points. Yay for points. I bought a ticket for Beyonce's Cowboy Carter concert a few days before the show. I wanted to go to the show and they have a show here and my friends really didn't want to go and no one really was interested in going. I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to say yes to this. I'm going to take this opportunity. I can go by myself. And not just that, but I'm going to go and have an amazing time. And I've done solo trips within the US before, mostly for work and pre-kids, pre-husband. I sort of traveled by myself, but this time just felt different. I think this was deciding to travel outside of the country without my family or friends, finding the support from my family and friends so that way, I still have someone to look after my kids, navigating my way around the country where my language ability was a little limited by myself, going to my first concert ever by myself just because I wanted to. It was just such a freeing experience and an unforgettable one. And it wasn't the easiest decision to make looking back, but I'm really excited to hear from Lisa in terms of how she helps other women and travelers who want to venture out and make this, solo experience a thing. So, without further ado, welcome to the show, Lisa.
Thank you. And before we dive in, Courtney, I just want to celebrate you for a moment. Taking that step and going to see Beyonce by yourself in a different country, like amazing. And even if it weren't a different country, going solo, no matter what the activity, is so empowering for women that I can't wait to dive in and talk about it all. But I just wanna say yay to you.
Oh, well, thank you. Yeah, it's definitely unnerving, I think, when you think about going and doing something on your own. Even if I decided I wanted to go down to the arena in Las Vegas and see a concert by myself, you always have that, thought in the back of my mind is like, should I go by myself? Is this going to be okay? Am I going to look weird and awkward, like standing there at a concert by myself? And like all of that went away as soon as I walked into the stadium and I'm like, I'm here, I'm in this moment. But I think it can take a lot to get to that point.
Exactly, and sometimes all it needs is a little bit of encouragement, a little bit of support, a little bit of validation for whatever it is for the person, and all those things are what I do as a solo travel coach.
Yeah, so tell me a little bit about that. You founded a company, 123 Go Solo, is that right?
That is correct. 123 goes solo. The 123 are 3 coaching sessions, and then a person is ready to go travel solo, whatever that looks like for a person. So I have people that I work with where that first step isn't necessarily France or Africa somewhere. It's simply a scenic drive up a mountainside with a journal to go meditate by themselves, to go have lunch after they come down from the mountain and journal at lunch. It's about taking those first steps and spending time with yourself. It's about making choices that are all about you.
And I think after you go on a trip where you make choices that are all about you, I think it's maybe a little harder to go on trips where you're like, hey, now I have to kind of like compromises. Because when you're by yourself, your compromise is, well, do I want to do this more so than I want to do this? You're not at the whim of other people. So
Exactly. So, and that could be anything. It could be location, it could be excursions, it could be the meals that you eat. I happen to be a person who is allergic to onion and garlic. So, think about what that eliminates. And I don't want to be the person that hinders the person who travels for food, right? My husband wants to go to New Orleans and be a foodie in the city, and I'm just like, "You need to go with someone other than me because I don't wanna ruin your trip." And so, when we go solo, it is all about us. From making that decision, what time of day do you like to travel? I love to get on a flight at 6 a.m. because then I land and I have the rest of the day. Of course, depending on where that location, that destination is. But the idea for me is to land during the day. So it all starts from the time you start considering the location to this time you book the flight to the time you decide what type of accommodations you enjoy and all of the rest that comes with it. The excursions, just the people, how much you want to engage with people, how much you don't want to engage with people. It really, every decision is yours. And like you said, right, like once you start doing that for yourself, it is harder to, you use the word compromise. I would say, to consider all of everybody else's expectations.
so how did you get started with your business in coaching women to take solo trips?
So 123 goes solo. I have been a certified life coach since 2005. I have been doing solo traveling and adventuring for 13 years, if we don't count the time that I got on a plane by myself in 6th grade. So I had this in me well before I ever recognized it as being a quote unquote solo travel thing, right? Now that's like a movement. I hear that 80% of women make all of travel decisions, whether that's going solo, whether that's helping coordinate a family trip, whatever it is where travel is concerned. I hear that that's a real statistic that women are 80% of the decision making in the entire industry. So why not put that work into it for ourselves? But women are afraid. They are afraid, like you mentioned. Am I going to look silly at a concert by myself? What's it going to look like when I'm dining by myself? And we tend to let our minds run away with us and make up scenarios that really don't exist. And so for me, last June was a pivotal moment when I came back from Kauai and I was scrolling through Facebook doing something that I never do. I was like ready to join some sort of travel group. And I found, 50 plus solo women who travel. So I'm like, well, that's my age group. Like, I'd love to maybe get some inspiration from the group. Like, what are other women doing? What am I not thinking about? And what I realized in being in this group, which is 600,000 women big, is that there's two types of women. Women like me who dive in, we just go. And the other type of woman is on that group for inspiration. They have a desire, but they're not sure how to take those steps. So I was like, I want to help these women. So I married the life coaching with the passion of solo travel and adventure and became what I refer to as a solo travel coach and created what is now a proven method 3 coaching sessions, and you're ready to go.
Yeah, so why don't you take me through that step? So if I'm, thinking I want to travel on my own and I, run into a post that you have on like a Facebook group and I decide, yeah, maybe she can help me. I want to travel on my own, but I'm just not sure where to go. What are the next steps? Like, what does that look like for me?
So first of all, feel free, and I say free, to do the 15-minute "Are we a good fit?" free consultation. Because, yes, I am not about selling this. I am not about convincing women that they need to do this. I wanna know that somebody has that true desire and that they are really ready to start taking some steps, that they just need the support and help. On the other end of it, I want them to feel safe from the very beginning because safety is such a big thing, and we can dive into that a little deeper. So I want them to know that they have somebody who's an advocate for them, who supports them, and who's going to make them feel safe. The first coaching session, and each coaching session is up to an hour. The first coaching session, we identify what the actual fear or fears are that have been holding them back. So I have a classic coaching tool, the Wheel of Life, and I have customized it to be the wheel of travel. And so there's 8 different areas in this wheel, 7 which I have identified that are pretty common, and 1 that is maybe something that I haven't thought of. That a person says, I'm actually scared that after 3 days, I'm gonna be bored because I'm not with anyone. Okay, so let's think about a trip that you can take for 3 days. So, we're not gonna send them to London. We're not gonna send them to Africa, at least from the United States, right? We want to be successful in this trip. We want to avoid jet lag. So let's narrow down where you can go for 3 days that feels comfortable for you. And so maybe that's where the first session goes, is to talk about different locations. And then after every session, there's homework. And I don't want people to be turned off by the term homework. There's no paper and pen, there's no textbook, there's no true deadline other than when we have our next coaching session. This is about you. So, in this example, the person would look into narrowing down those 4 locations, come back to the table ready to say, and this was a real life example. So the person came back to the table saying, San Francisco. So then during the second session, okay, look into flights, start thinking about excursions, maybe look into local restaurants, and come back to the table for your third session, like ready to talk about all that. So, third session, that's what they've done. So, they're ready to book their travel.
Got it. So there's 3 sessions, so that's where the 1, 2, 3 comes in. The first session, you're looking at what does a trip look like for you. The second session, you're going out and you're figuring out the logistics of going to said location after you've discussed it. And the third session, you're doing all the things that you need to be able to book that trip. So 3 sessions, you're ready to go at this point.
Right. So, that's breaking it down in its most simplistic form, right? Now, I've had somebody like, let's go back to the person who maybe it's the scenic drive up the mountain. The fear underneath the fears was that she didn't know how to tell her husband how she wanted to start to do these things by herself. She was afraid that he was going to take it personally, thinking and hearing, you don't want to do this with, but really her thought process is, I want to prove to myself that I'm capable of doing this on my own, that I can make all these decisions, that I can feel safe about it, that I can make it happen. And they don't know this at the time, but they uncover something in themselves that's sitting beneath the fear within the heart center and opening up a part of their soul that they didn't realize needs opening. And so that's when you've already referred to, like, people are ready to keep going. What's that next trip? What's that next adventure?
And I think I felt the same way too when I took my first trip, or I guess my first solo trip again after husband, after kids, and I booked the trip to Miraval. It was close, you're in Arizona now, so it's a quick drive from where you're at and a quick flight from here in Las Vegas. And I was there initially booked 2 days, and then I was like, no, I'm going to stay for 3. So I spent 3 nights there, glorious nights on point, so didn't have to pay for anything, which helped. But it was just time for myself, and it was time to uncover things, like you said, that I didn't know were beneath the surface. I went there for one reason, and when I got there, all these emotions and all these things flooded out that I think I'd been suppressing and was able to deal with just because I had the time. And I don't think you get that when you're on vacation or you're taking a trip or traveling with other people. So,
Correct. Those are the moments. The person who went to San Francisco for the 3 days, she said when she opened the door to her accommodations at her Airbnb, she had to take a moment because she looked around and said, "I did this. I made these plans. I made these decisions. I am here, and I have all of this fun right in front of me." And she took a moment, and it was almost a cry, right? So, very similar to what you're referring to. The person who went up the mountain, I was like, "I just wanna prepare you for that when you go up that mountain and you are meditating, you may release something that you are not prepared for. You may cry, and I want you to know right here, right now, that that cry is not a negative thing. That is a celebration of you. So don't think like, "Oh my gosh, I finally did this and ruining my day. I'm sitting here blubbering. If people were to see me, they'd be like, 'What are you doing?'" That's not it. You're unfolding.
and every trip by yourself doesn't have to be this under the Tuscan sun traveling somewhere to like release all these emotions kind of moment. So if that's not you, that's not your goal, just know you can go and just have fun. So Paris was fun. Paris was not was not any of that, but it was me saying, "Hey, I'm going to take this trip. I'm going to go and I'm going to go have a good time by myself, and I'm going to do this by myself knowing that it's okay to travel by myself. It's okay to make these decisions." And I can I can do things that seem a little challenging or difficult, and when you're in the moment, you're just like you're just going and you just do it, and then you realize it wasn't really that hard at all. But I think the hardest step is just deciding to go, deciding to do it. So whether again it's that trip up the mountain or a trip to San Francisco where you're gonna hang out for 3 days, and then you mentioned something about boredom earlier, and I can't imagine being on a trip for like 3 days by myself and having problem with boredom at all. I think I'd be wanting to add on more days more than anything.
Exactly. What do you think she said when she came back and I checked in with her? She wanted to stay longer. She's ready to do it again.
So I think there are a lot of hurdles for people who want to be able to travel solo. Like you mentioned, the fear that maybe your spouse is or your partner is going to feel like you want to travel, you don't want them around. And that's not the case at all. I love traveling with my husband and with my kids. It brings me a lot of joy to see them having a great time and to be in the moment with them. But again, there is something special about being able to just take some time for yourself because you need it.
Exactly. And that's another thing, like, a misconception about solo travel would be that it's selfish. It's not selfish. It's actually quite the opposite. It's selfless. We come back, and you can attest to this. We come back better people. We come back better spouses. We come back fresh and ready to take on new challenges. So, whoever we might be working with, whoever we might be working for, like, there's a freshness, there's a refueling that you can't get.
No, I was gonna say I think it's really good that you said that because I think a lot of times we do, especially like I a huge portion of my community is women physicians, and I know that, like, within our community, we always feel like we have to be doing this and we're doing that, and we're always working to, like, help everyone else. And a lot of times we don't take as good care of ourselves as we should. And I think, yeah, when you decide that you wanna go and you wanna do something on your own, you do feel a little selfish, like, for me personally, it's saying, "Okay, well, I'm taking away financially from the pot that, like, I could be booking a family trip, but instead I'm booking a trip by myself." It's me leaving the kids at home with dad or with grandma or with my sister, and then, going frolicking wherever I'm at, but then wondering, like, if I should have just made the decision just to stay home so that way I didn't have to, like, find childcare and put that burden on them. So there is a lot of feelings of, like, what I'm doing is selfish, but it is really it's self-love, it's self-care, it's creating a better person who can go back and pour into your family and pour into your job or whatever it may be. So I just wanted to highlight that it was a very good thought that you just brought up there.
Thank you. And a nugget that comes out of something you just said in being a physician, we can use travel to help better communities in the world. Something that I did when I was 40, I always make fun and say that I make fun of myself, that I had an early midlife crisis. There were multiple things happening all at once in my life, and I found myself crying a lot and screaming in my car for scream therapy. And I was like, okay, Lisa, you can downward spiral or you can do something bigger than you. And I put some feelers out and I ended up finding a non government organization, an NGO out of Canada that is Shanti Uganda in Uganda. And it's a safe place for women to give birth. It's run by Ugandan midwives and it's very yoga based. My background is yoga instruction, massage therapy, aromatherapy, and of course, the life coaching. So I went to Uganda. This was my first big trip out of the United States. Made a 9-hour stop in London, took advantage of the 9 hours, got on the tube, did some things, got back on the tube, 9 more hours, landed in Entebbe. And it was all about the women when I got there. These women all had AIDS and need to feel safe going through the birthing process. So I would work with them on the front end through massage, through yoga, through aromatherapy. They thought essential oils were magical. Once they started really like going into labor, I would hand them off and they would have an all natural, safe, supportive experience. So you can use travel to be selfless in the world. You can use it to help heal yourself. So, whatever it is that's calling someone, that's giving them whatever that desire is, we can work through the fear around it.
Well, I love that you were able to do that through your own situation and turn an experience where you're like, I feel like I need to give something back to the world and, take the opportunity to go all the way to Uganda. Uganda must be a magical place because that was one of the first, like this, it was actually the second trip I ever took outside of the US. But yeah, Uganda, really magical place. And the fact that you could go there and really just help these women. So you turned something that seemed like a almost hopeless situation at the time into something rewarding for you and for others, which is just incredible. So,
Yeah, and talk about coming back a better person. I mean, you just did so much good for yourself and for a community. I just don't know how you match that. And the 5 days in Kenya to go on safari, and everything is a gift and a lesson along the way.
so you went to Kenya on a safari by yourself too?
Well, I ended up going with a couple of other people who were volunteers. But yes, like how can I go to Africa and not go on safari? It was in the plan. It just wasn't completely planned before I got there.
And that's another good thing about like solo travel. Like solo travel doesn't necessarily mean that you go on a trip and you're completely isolated. A lot of times you can find opportunities to do group trips. So you may not know anyone when you get there, but you'll probably leave with some friends on the way out. Going solo doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be just by yourself or in isolation. So I think that's also a good thing to point out. I've had a couple of others on the podcast where they talk about some of the trips that they have available, and I think you should always be open to booking some of those experiences so that way you can just go and you don't have to be dependent on anyone else, but you can be around other people who have like similar goals and similar travel ideas.
I literally just got back from Nicaragua 3 weeks ago, and where I stayed, I went completely by myself. Where I stayed, it was people who wanted to learn to surf. There was a 61-year-old woman from the States who learned to surf for the first time. There were repetitive people, people who go back again and again to surf there. I didn't even surf. I was there for the yoga and the body work, the food, and staying in not only where you can hear the ocean and see the ocean and be in the ocean, but you can also hear and be in the jungle on the same property. And one of the beautiful things about this solo experience was the communal meals. So you show up to your first meal. I've heard, Courtney, women say, oh, you need to be extroverted to be a solo traveler. Oh, you need to be introverted to be a solo traveler. I'm an ambivert. I pull out both when needed. I really relish my alone time. But these meals were communal. And so you sit down and people are coming and going in this community, so to speak, at Costa Dulce. And I sat down for the first time and somebody was like, did you just arrive? And I was like, I did. And she was like, where are you in from? Natural, organic flow of conversation. Nobody needs to fear, oh my gosh, what are people going to think? Nobody has to fear, how am I going to come up with conversation? Nobody needs to fear, what are people thinking? Oh my gosh, this girl's here by herself.
Right. And so when you booked this particular location in Nicaragua, were you on the hunt for something that was specifically tailored to solo travelers, or is it just something you decide, hey, I just want to go, I'm going to go to Nicaragua and I'm just going to pick a hotel and I'm going to go, and it just happened to turn out that way?
So it was something that showed up through my Facebook feed. And I was like, this is my next trip. This is where I want to go. This is the next adventure. So my only intention was to do the full body nourishment package, which again was like yoga in a beautiful place, pure products that are going to be used on my body for all sorts of different body work. And, again, to be in nature, both ocean and jungle. The surprise to me there was when I overheard one of the guests asking the assistant manager, because they embed themselves, the people who work there, the yoga instructors, embed themselves in mealtime. You get to know them on a personal basis. Somebody had asked Zach about a family that was there the first couple days that this particular person had arrived. And I overheard Zach say to her, I don't really remember the details of families. My number one priority in connecting with our guests is the female solo traveler. And I overheard this. And so I made a point to go talk to Zach. I was like, Zach, I think you and I should talk about what I've been up to. And with that, he listened to me and he invited me to a meeting that he had the next day with their sales director of marketing and their co-founder. And we collaborated as far as making the female solo traveler feel comfortable at Costa Dulce in Nicaragua. So part of that collaboration was a blog that I wrote when I got back, which was exactly that, Nicaragua, where Costa Dulce is the ultimate host female solo travel. I had no idea, but travel leads us to the unknown and to those pivotal moments and to the transformations in life that we don't even know exist.
And so you touched upon safety. I know that safety is a big issue that comes up for anyone that's solo traveling, particularly female solo travelers. What are some things that you can do to kind of circumvent some of the fears that people have around safety and make sure that you're having a safe and uneventful trip.
So there's not like one blanket statement that I can make that's going to make every woman feel safe. What I do always say is make sure you are functioning in the yellow, which means you're always aware of your surroundings. Ditch the bling, leave it at home. Don't give